I wanted to talk about something which has been impacting my productivity, which is the cost of switching and the power of saying no. Just in the past couple of months, I've basically pivoted twice. First, moving away from my education consulting business to do like a community for founders. And the second now into basically an agency model for communities full stop. I think I really underestimated the cost of switching when I made these decisions. And I wanted to go over them now because, well, first of all, let me talk about like why I'm talking about this and why this has been front of mind. So the first thing is I've noticed like a drastic drop in my level of productivity, which I believe has come from not being clear or not being honest about why I decided to switch away from the education consulting business, which I now believe to be a mistake. And the second being, I've been getting a lot of people reminding me that the thing that I had previously was working. And now that I'm trying to make a brand new thing work for the first time, I'm confident that I can do it, but it feels like a mistake. It feels like I'm repeating those first few steps. And I thought I was doing the right thing by saying no to the opportunities that were opening up as a result of me like being focused and working on the business, the education consulting business. But now I realize I was saying no to the wrong thing and like as a result saying yes to the wrong thing. Let me give a bit of context, take a step back. With GOM Admissions, which was my education consulting business, I was working with high school students who were looking to go into, top tier colleges. And I was working with students who had entrepreneurial backgrounds, who were trying to do something impressive outside of their own school curriculum. And I'd worked with people for free. I built up testimonials. I'd gotten good reviews and I had a standard operating procedure. I had a way of getting new clients and customers. Just as things were starting to work, I decided to switch. And the reason, or at least the reason I told myself, was that I didn't care about the industry. I wasn't fundamentally passionate about the admissions process for US colleges. I did care about working with people and I really enjoyed the students that I worked with, but I thought, why limit myself to just working with students? And why limit myself to just working within the admissions process? And so I decided to switch and build a community for founders full stop, which is when I realized that because I haven't built a startup that was venture backed and I hadn't exited, I didn't have the background to be able to actually work with people who were aiming to do those things, who were aiming to raise venture funding, who were like aiming for an exit, etc. And so now I'm working on commoditizing community management and community building because that is something that I do believe is underutilized. And that's where I'm at now. That's where I'm at. And that sounds great. Like the story makes sense. But here's the thing that isn't immediately evident. There are so many hidden costs to switching, and there are so many follow-on costs to the time that you've lost because you're starting from ground zero again. So just as an example, just yesterday, I got a text from someone who I'd worked with. He was one of the like very first few people that I worked with for free in return for a testimonial. And because it's now coming up to application season for colleges, he was saying like, oh, could you let me know what your services are so I can pay you, so I can work with you? And I had to turn this person down. I had to turn down someone who like, without any sort of lead nurture, was basically coming up and asking, what can you do for me, right? Like, how can I pay you? How can I work with you? And before this, a few weeks ago, probably a month ago now, when I told some of the customers that had like basically signed up to a $5,000 package with me that I wouldn't be continuing on with working with them, they were like begging me. This one mother was basically like on the verge of tears asking, please, like, take my monies. And think about how insane that is. And I said no to that because I was convinced about the direction that I was going in, which I guess is something, right? Like I was able to say no to that because I thought I was making the right decision. Now I realize that's a hidden cost that's going to keep compounding, right? Like even with the community stuff, I was only doing the community for founders for like a month. And in the past week, I've had 2 people reach out and say like, hey, I noticed that this community group is no longer active. I was wondering if you could look at this like progress that I've made from the advice that you gave me. Right. And I've had to again turn them down and say, sorry, like I'm actually not doing that anymore. I'm focused on this one thing. And I believe now where I'm at with the decisions that I've made, I believe that's the right call to make, right? Like I believe that it's right that I don't split my attention between various different projects, but I shouldn't have put myself in that situation to start with, right? The mistake was made way before, and now the way to move forward is to continue on this path, bearing in mind the lessons that I learned from this particular episode, which is basically to not play the same boss again. And the boss in this case is sticking with things until they actually work and then continuing to stick with them despite feeling like I don't actually care about the admissions process, despite feeling like I can't attract the right kind of people because I don't have this other experience, right? Not skipping vehicles, not hopping across to something different because of something that I didn't know before. It's frustrating because on the one hand, you do need to be stubborn. You do absolutely need to be stubborn because the chance that your thing works exactly the way that you intended the first time you do it is basically nil. It's basically zero. And if it does, then I would almost be skeptical of that. But on the flip side, there is such a thing as the wrong vehicle or the wrong kind of person, the wrong kind of client. And this is a lesson that I had to learn when I was first learning how to do sales calls, right? I remember with GOM Admissions, there was this time I hopped on a call. I'd prep for it. It was like a call that was late at night because I was talking to someone in America. And I remember I'd been up since 4 a.m. I had a full day of work and I got home, had a quick like shake for dinner because I didn't have time. And then I spent like half an hour preparing for the sales call and then hopped on a call. And the woman was literally finishing up taking a dump, like while hopping on the call. I literally heard her finish up her business, wipe, flush, wash her hands, and then she turned her camera on and she was like, oh yeah, sorry, just finishing something up. I was like, yeah, lady, like I heard the whole thing. Thanks. Like that makes me feel great. That makes me feel like I haven't wasted my time. But at that stage, I was still just starting out. I didn't have any customers. So I just like sucked it up and like grinned through it, right? And I thought that was what you had to do. What I found though, as I started getting a bit of evidence, getting a bit of traction and learning that I actually had value that I could provide to the marketplace, was that it was so much easier to just say no to people that I didn't think I could help or that I didn't want to work with because my time was limited and I had proof that like what I had to offer was actually useful to people, right? So it's kind of this juxtaposition where on the one hand, you do have to be stubborn and boneheaded, but on the other hand, there is such a thing as like the power of being able to say no. And I think the reason that I was able to say no previously to GOM Admissions and the reason that I decided to pivot was because I didn't quite recognize the real cost of switching vehicles. So what were the costs? Let me lay them out. So right now, I've got a bunch of domains that I've paid for. That is a real cost. And those domains are basically going to go to waste. That's number one. Number two, all these domains are linked to all these various services like Calendly, Google Workspace, my like YouTube accounts where you're watching this, all the other services that I use like Canva, etc. All of those had to be updated each time I switch. So that's a real sort of admin cost there. Number three is each time I started a project, I would have some kind of a landing page where I built something out. I would decide on some kind of a logo and spend some time basically building out a website that I didn't end up using anyways. Number 4, I would build out ad assets that were specific to that niche, and I would spend ad dollars running ads to this thing to try and like validate, get some demand. And of course, on top of that, I'm also doing like organic outreach, right? Like I primarily use LinkedIn, so I've probably spent hundreds of hours sending out LinkedIn invites. I think I've sent out 10,000 invites over the past year. So there's all that cost as well. There's the cost of actually like speaking with people that I want to speak to in the niche, right? So all the conversations that I've had with founders and like accelerator organizers, people that are in the admissions space, etc., all of that. Some slightly more annoying ones, like right now, my Google Ads account is banned, which means that this YouTube account, I can't actually monetize it because I had a period where I had closed down GOM Admissions, but I didn't report it to Google. So Google thought I was trying to like, I don't know, scam the algorithm by changing my previous business to my new one. That's something. And so there's all this like, it's really messy. Like switching is really messy from an ops standpoint. Like operationally, it's messy. You have to close down so many open doors, and some of them will have real monetary cost and some of them will have time cost or attention cost, right? So, and the follow up to that is you have to start from zero, right? So right now, I'm revalidating the idea of community management as a service. I'm revalidating my ideal customer profile. I'm having to relearn the messaging that actually resonates with the customers. Like I have to relearn the pain points, the solutions. I have to relearn processes. I have to rebuild out SOPs, standard operating procedures. All of these require a real cost because I have to, find my way into like talking to an expert within the field, either through time investment or money investment. I have to pay a consultant. Like there are all of these costs that come from even just the first few steps, getting from 0 to 1. And I think because, and for some reason, like as soon as I got to a stage where I could profitably scale my previous business, I just, it's like my brain just like wiped out all all the experience and all the knowledge of like how painful it was to build this thing up from 0 to 1. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do it now. Let's immediately switch to something else that I don't know works, that I don't have experience in, and that I don't have track record for, that I need to work for free to get reviews, and that I'll need to pump thousands of hours into actually building to a stage where it's profitable again, right? Like it sounds stupid because it is, but I'm making this so that like I can remember just how stupid that was. And all along the path of my building a business journey, I've known about concepts, but it feels like it's only after I make the mistake that I actually like feel the concept, right? So the first time this happened with churn, so with the admissions consulting business, there isn't really a concept of customer retention because there is 100% churn. As soon as someone finishes their application, their work with you is basically done, right? So every year you have 100% churn. Rough business to grow. There was a concept of leverage and the concept that in order to scale a service-based business, you need to be able to like train and find good talent, and a good service-based agency ends up becoming a talent business. And the bottleneck to scaling becomes like how well you can train and grow talent. That was something I had to feel because I was feeling like I was maxed out in terms of my output, because I was trying to do all the fulfillment myself. And so I had to think about how to scale, right? Like, so that was a lesson that I had to feel. There was a concept of customer finance acquisition, which is that my return on ad spend was around 10 to 1, which meant that I could reliably grow my acquisition funnel because I knew that no matter what I spent, I could make more on the back end from what I spent. And so the limiting factor wasn't how much money I had, it was how much time I had to actually fulfill on the back end. And so now I feel like, I'm hoping at least, that this is This is me feeling the feeling of actually sticking to an idea, sticking to a project and not pivoting because I come across an obstacle that I didn't expect, or because I find something else that I think is going to be shinier and better and newer and more exciting and a bigger project in the end. Because I will always underestimate the cost of switching. There is always going to be work that is repeated on the other end that I don't need to redo. And I can't keep fighting the same boss if I want to get ahead. So I hope that was helpful to some of you.